Aloha. Today I wanted to expand off the last video and go into the power structure and how it's set up, and it's been being set up for these last few decades for this next shift of collective movement or understanding, and kind of related to the old school shifts where it shifted from the church to science. Now it's shifting from science to the spirit or the soul. And this orchestrated shift, just as in the past it went from the science or the church to the scientific, the heliocentric model of understanding and making everything like simplified through science, and that's why the heliocentric model was accepted, because they were selling it as something simple, something people could understand, and they really just wanted to give people a toy, like give people a globe to hold in their hands for a long time, and then base an entire system and series of lies on that to build up the power within an artificial, an illusory frequency, to keep people in that totally separate state of being, even from their own earth plane existence, their very purpose and existence and connection to a creation. Even before that, when people realized that they were on a flat earth, before the globe model came out, people were at least noticeably connected to their obvious awareness of their surroundings, not in an ignorant state of we're on a ball where nothing is at all like verifiable. None of it makes sense. So if our very trusting of our eyes and our reality and our conscious engagement in the physical reality doesn't make sense, then we don't make sense. Like, our existence doesn't make sense at all. So when it shifted from the church to science, like science became the new church, then they were priming the next step of evolution, and this next step of conscious engagement in the physical reality, because they had been, it was from separation before, now it's going into connection. So it's like a frequency, up and down, up and down, up and down, just like they play with your emotions on television, where the commercials come in, and it's this up and down frequency, playing with your lower chakras, your sexual desires, your food desires, your relationships, your emotions, your like whole emotional body. Everything is being manipulated on a flicker rate moment every moment of the day. And these new shifts that people are starting to realize within the internal connections with spirit, with the soul, and with their connection to the earth plane, and realizing all this stuff is going to be kind of channeled in this certain way. And these individuals that have been primed to be put in our faces as like the people who are successful, the people who've made it, the people who have they surpassed the all the barriers. They made it, they did it, and now we have to be like them. We have to be like the super friends, and these super friends that are out there that have been primed by the television and our music and our movies and our politics and our university system. They have designed this pretty much system that if you go against it or say anything counter to it, then something is seriously wrong with you. The same with, like they did with the witches in the Salem witch hunts, and all the other times where they destroyed all the indigenous, the Native Americans here, and then the indigenous peoples all over the world told them they were savages for having their own connections outside of the group thought, the hive mind, the mainstream of that time. So today's version of that is like these powerhouses that have been put in our face in movies like Selma. Like Selma came out like a few years ago in order to prime the foundation for the Black Lives Matter movement and channel that energy into politics itself, which is why Killer Mike got involved and related Bernie Sanders to Martin Luther King, and that whole channel of thought process. Meanwhile, we are getting triggered by these genetically modified ideas of awakening and being sold more of the same with a new jacket, with like a new understanding, and will probably get sold when they implode the dollar and come out with the United Nations with this flat earth stuff, and do the orchestrated version of that. Give some kind of credit, like do something with the money and put some kind of credit out there. But the main thing is I want to focus on is for people not to fall into this powerless, hopeless state of being where other people are dictating your conscious engagement and your awakening because something sounds good. As they get these people on here, there's this list. They have all these. This is the master class, Oprah's master class, and she has on her network. Like when she split from the network television and had her own network, that was a big move. Like that was a big deal. She was making some like, yeah, it was very important. So when that happened, and then she started to move into like the spiritual community and consciousness, and started to talk, invite people like Eckhart Tolle on her show, and he's talking about oneness and this whole thing. And I read a few of Eckhart Tolle's books a few years ago, and his information, like, it resonates, it's on point, but it's the way this energy is being manipulated and to sell a particular agenda, which is what gets me. It's like it's a thing beyond the content and goes into the intent of how this program is being designed and sold to people. Because like I said in the last video, you can't only focus on the lightness. You can't focus only on, how beautiful and wonderful everything is, which is how and what this program is designed to sell in, because we've been dominated by darkness for so long, orchestrated darkness for so long by these same individuals behind these faces that you trust, that anything that is nice, even if it's a genetically modified TV dinner, we're gonna eat it up. And they know that, so they have these people out there like Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and all her super friends to get you to believe that this is what awakening smells like. This is what it looks like. So they have these headpieces to lead up these particular versions of your reality. Like Ellen DeGeneres and the LGBT community, and Barack Obama passing all this stuff. It's the timing. It's the timing of everything. And these master class, they mix it in. Like, what's Jay-Z doing with Maya Angelou? Like, what's Condoleezza Rice doing up there with Maya Angelou, Jane Fonda, like Bon Jovi and Maya Angelou? Like, see, I keep referencing Maya Angelou because she represents this essence, and they put it. You can see it in the beginning. It's a code. It's like, okay, we got to get people. These are the people we want to get. They're going after the millennials when they hit season 1, episode 1. Oprah's coming out with her new stuff, a master class. Before this is even put on air, you have to see who they're going after. So they gotta say, obviously, it's Oprah. So they gotta get the struggle. They gotta get the group of people who are in the deepest struggle in her focus group. So they get Jay-Z out there. It's directly linked to Obama and that whole scene, whatever the next card is going to be played. So it's Jay-Z, then Diane Sawyer, because you don't want to be seeming racist. You got to have, the mixture in there. And then Maya Angelou, boom, anchor it in on the 3rd episode. Like, I really like this now. Like, Maya Angelou is on here. So she sets the foundation for everybody else. Then he brings Simon Cowell's ass in there. What the hell? Like, I didn't even recognize that. But Simon Cowell comes in next. And then they're basing all of these so-called masters on a financially successful space. It's not about their character beyond this space. But they have to make it feel like it has this character beyond this space when they have people like Maya Angelou and people you trust and feel and hear their voices, like Morgan Freeman and who else? That's pretty much it on here. Like Civil Rights Special, Belief Special, Patti LaBelle, The Rock, Smokey Robinson, Ellen DeGeneres, Sidney Poitier, like this whole, so it's very, it's a calibration algorithm, how they set it up, excuse me, how they set it up for you to believe all of them. So they sprinkle in a few for you to believe all of them and believe the system itself is okay. But individually, these individuals are thinking they're doing something great. Like they're like, oh, okay, good. We're making a change. But it's not about, excuse me, the individuals. It's about how this whole system is designed in itself. So this is how they're merging it with Hollywood and politics, and then the same way they're merging science or the mainstream with the science community and that whole space of like what tomorrow's consciousness will scientifically look like, or what it will look like on television. They want to design this whole shift around the structure that's already been placed in front of us. And I'll play this real quick so you can see like how the verbiage of what these individuals are sounding like and what they're selling, because you see spirit here, but you see just to the right of it is the materialistic version of reality. It's not for you. It's not for the spirit itself. It's not coming from the indigenous spirit. It's coming from the materialistic ego version of what spirit might look like to a broken system. Aloha. I wanted to address a few things in this build, and first started off with sharing that little clip of a video that I actually recorded almost 2 years ago now, where it's talking about, I think that video is called Flat Earth and the Orchestrated Awakening. Oh no, that was the one right before it. So that one was whatever it was called. I think it was something about the master class and Oprah and how they're going to use these individuals, these actors, these politicians, these things that are wrong with the broken society. They're going to use those programs to make you feel like things are changing, when in fact those things shouldn't have been wrong or inflicted that way in the first place. So if they change some things that they did wrong within a system that was inherently wrong, then you have the illusion of things changing for the better. But they're not. They're still changing. They're changing within a box of destruction. So they're saying, oh, well, we have this little fire going on right here and we need to put it out. Not to say that any of the issues that are being addressed right now by the system are tiny. They're very big problems. The thing is, the system itself is the biggest problem. That's my whole point with all these videos. So they very seldom put out there the positive momentum, the positive movement, because they want you to have the illusion of positive momentum, positive movement, while the system consistently beats you down or adds to its enslavement programming around you. And it can do that only when you're locked into a space of giving your power away to a system that you think has your best interests in mind. But it doesn't. It doesn't have your best interests in mind. It only has its own interests in mind. So when you're watching the Golden Globes last night, or if you've seen any of the clips from the Golden Globes last night, look at all these people, these rich ass people celebrating themselves, congratulating themselves for mind controlling the masses. This is awards ceremony time frame right now, and you're going to see this over and over and over again. And I had to mention this now because this is a very vulnerable time for the system, in a sense that it's going to show you who it actually is and what it really is concerned with. And when you listen to them, and this is why they only give them so much time, like when they're receiving these awards, they only have so much time. And then you have people who go rogue or something like that, like when they're up there and they speak off of the script. They speak off the script, and they like Natalie Portman was talking about, oh, here are all the male nominated directors or whatever, all male nominated directors. And then you see her face, you see how flustered she is, and then you're like, oh, I really believe that makes a lot of sense. The whole thing last night was based upon women's rights and abuse against all people, not just women, but specifically women last night, because this is the actual mechanism that's going to be used within the next few years to shift out of this idea of the patriarchal program, like things are really changing. This is, like I was saying, that little box or that little fire within the bigger system of destruction. The main thing that's going to go during and after or around this whole pedophilia thing, implosion that's going on within the system, is the holding accountable, or apparently holding accountable, these men or the patriarchal system for how it's treated women over the years. So you're gonna, just like you got pumped up about Barack Obama, now you're supposed to get pumped up about women's rights. The same way they got you pumped up about Bernie Sanders, they want you to get pumped up about things are changing now and it's time is up, and you're like, yeah, you're right, we need to address what's going on. Time is up. Let's stick together. Let's wear black in solidarity. And all these people are sitting around in mansions, multi-million-dollar mansions, while the system continually mind controls people to make a profit off of what they claim to be against. So nothing is actually real. Nothing is really going on. So they're going to use the falling of one system to bring in the rising of another system. So this is another thing that I confirmed, and I'm going to find another old video that I mentioned this same topic, where I think it was a video where I was talking about Trump. But I remember speaking in reference to how they're going to use Trump. I mean, he's just an obvious piece of, he's an overt piece of shit. So like this out of control ego, this out of control masculine. It's not even masculine, because that's not what real masculinity is. It ain't got shit to do with being an egotistical asshole. It's just how that has been portrayed within this patriarchal system. He represents the out of control nature of something like that, like the out of balance production of something that should have never been like that in the first place. Like, the system shouldn't have been this way in the first place, but individuals, beings, entities, whatever you want to call it, decided at one time that, oh, we're gonna do this. We don't give a shit about these people. Like, it's just, we're gonna make our millions of dollars, and then it'll be on the backs of all of them, and they won't care or know because they're too ignorant or stupid to acknowledge it. And if that's the case, then they deserve to get what they got. So that's how their mentality is. And all of these systems in this Western so-called civilization are based upon that. So in this shift, after Barack Obama, you have, that was a celebration. And then before that was like, you're sick, you're horrible. Like, they wanted you to hurry up and get Bush out of the office. So they had to sell you a doggy treat, something to be happy about. So they sold you Barack Obama. Now they sold you, and you can rally around Barack Obama, whereas before you can rally around hating Bush. Now, after Barack Obama, now you have to rally around hatred, fear, destruction, and all this other stuff. And that's what Trump represents. He represents the patriarchal system. So they put him in there after Barack Obama to get you more riled up about voting, to get you more riled up about the system, to get you more interested in your own enslavement through this system. No different than they got you more riled up for Barack Obama by having Bush in there before him. So you were already going to vote for him. There's a lot of people that were just going to vote for Barack Obama just because he was so-called black. But since you had Bush in there, you got extra people getting out there and going to the voting booth and all that other stuff, knowing that the votes don't even matter, but they're playing you like a video game. Like, oh, this is what it's all about. So it's about playing your emotions, and that's why they use these actors like Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku. They play your emotions. People already know this, but what's happening is they're kicking it into gear. They're using these little pawns, like all the actresses in Hollywood. They're using them now to promote this female president for 2020 thing. Whether it's a female president or a female vice president, it doesn't matter. It's going to be, how will these candidates, whoever they are, even if they're not, I don't like using female, like women president, or they're going to use this as some kind of mechanism to suck you into their system. And once you're sucked into their system, they got you. They don't have to do any more because you've signed the contract for your own enslavement. You've asked them to give you something when they're not interested in giving you anything. So if you ask them to give you something, they're going to give you something within the box that maintains their own structure, their own so-called success, their own everything that keeps them flying high in this system. Where, as if you were supposed to, if you were to address the system, then you'd be talking to a different person. You'd be saying a different thing. You'd be coming from a different perspective. So anyway, I know I'm kind of like all over the place with this video. There's so many things that I really want to address, but I pretty much already addressed the majority of this stuff. That's why I played that video earlier from almost 3 years ago now, or no, 2 years ago now, talking about you know, how the system is going to use a new age. And the reason why I played it is because that was a good example of showing you how they're also going to use the segue into the new age agenda, because they're also going to sacrifice the new age community to sell in a mainstream new age community. So the new age community is all fake. It's garbage. It's bogus. It's known, like all this alien agenda shit and all that stuff. They already have confirmed all that nonsense, but it's still built up of a lot of quality information and things that are beneficial to you. So they're going to take, like, meditation in itself is not bad, obviously. Crystals, they're natural. It's not bad. Yoga, like all this stuff is part of the Western new age community right now. And they've just adopted that stuff. So does that mean that meditation is bad, that crystals are? No, of course not. But since it's been adopted, it's been tainted. So it keeps people away, but it also sucks people in. And it really creates this little kind of like community where once that has been generated, the system can now use it to its benefit. So it can use it for the positive and the negative. And that's better when you're trying to get people to lock themselves into your reality. And so this mainstream new age community is going to use the best stuff of the new age community and demonize the worst stuff of the new age community to activate this mainstream new age thought process into the masses. So that's how you're going to have, they're going to use the people that are on the bridge of, or on the fence of those communities to sell that in. So this is why I was saying in that video and the video before that was uploaded before that one, they're going to use all these actors, and they've already used all these actors to go on to the master class, basically Oprah's new age televangelist sort of movement. The thing that I've confirmed last night by watching the Golden Globes was that they're going to use, in order to get to that new age, in order to get to that new frame of thought, they're going to use the women's rights movement to activate that new age. So the old age of the patriarchal program and, you know, abusing women and paying women less and treating women like this, they're going to use that not only to distract from the indigenous story, but to activate whatever kind of story that they want you to rally behind. So that's also how it protects itself, because like even for this video, there's going to be some people that are going to get offended, that are probably going to get brought to this video from whatever kind of perspective in reference to the Golden Globes or Oprah, and they're gonna watch it and they're gonna say, well, what are you against women's rights? What are you against? There's people out there, whether they comment like that or not, there's people out there, because they're not really gonna see where I'm coming from in reference to this. So that's the inherent defense mechanism that's built into this mind control program. It plays the bully and it plays the victim. And the victim is the shield for it. It's like, no, don't hit me. We're doing good for you. This is all for you. You think Oprah gives a shit about you? You think all them people sitting up there in them thousands of dollars of dresses and suits and in their big ass mansions, you think they give a shit about you? No, they only give a shit about celebrating themselves and celebrating the world that they've created on the blood and the bones of everybody else that they stepped on to get there. The indigenous people around the world, the Western civilization, needs to be held accountable for what it's done. But it's not, because you can't even talk about that, because, oh, you need to, basically they're telling you should just move on. You're just thinking old. We're all the same way they use technology to sell it. Oh, well, you don't like technology. You're talking in technology right now. You have a phone and a laptop and this and that. And so, what are you really talking about? So that's how it protects itself. So the same thing is happening in Hollywood. And like I said, they're going to use all these actors and these activists to sell in this new version of reality. But ultimately, they're just going to maintain. Like if they were to when they're going to put in the first woman president, you think things are going to change? The same thing that happened when they put in the so-called first black president. Nothing changed. Nothing's going to change. It doesn't matter how many tears you shed watching people's speeches at the Golden Globes last night. Ain't shit gonna change with that system. It's never meant to be changed. It's only meant to evolve itself. So, last night was a big step. This is the first award ceremony of this year, of the first year after Donald Trump. You can see where they're starting. They're starting the presidential campaign for 2020 now. They're starting it right now. I mean, they've already started doing it like right after Trump was selected, was put in that office. But they really are starting it now. And it doesn't have to be focused on an individual. They just have to gather your energy. And then as soon as the individual gets enough tread in your, when they want to activate it, then they just take the energy that they put in to your subconscious and your conscious reality, and then they activate it for a new, or like channel that energy into an individual. The same way they did with like Bernie Sanders, like, oh, change, and change you can believe in, the whole system. No, Bernie Sanders wasn't going to change shit, and he wasn't representing any change other than a change, no different than the change within the box of self-destruction and collective destruction that they got going on right now. It's the same thing. The same thing that they're trying to do with this women's rights thing and this whole thing. Women's rights based upon who? Who can give you your right? What rights from who? You're still asking for rights from these sick and destructive ass people and this system. No different than the civil rights, where people were asking the same system to give them their civil rights. They don't give a shit about you. They never did. They only care about themselves. And they're going to use their big dogs to maintain that program. And that's why I mentioned Oprah 2 years ago, because she's one of the big dogs. And they're going to use her, and just like they used her last night, they used her to set the tone for this whole women empowerment thing, to make it look like you're having a fight. So the same way, and this is what it really boils down to, the same way they put Black Lives Matter out there to supposedly represent the black struggle and got shit to do with that. That shit was funded by, I almost said, what was his name? Soros. Funded by Soros. Ain't got shit to do with the actual things that are going on in reference to the indigenous people, but you believe it, and and they were talking about some very positive information. So the same way they activated Black Lives Matter to rally people around that, as if that was going to change something, the same way they use that is the same way they're using women's rights and the abuse and all this stuff that's going on in Hollywood and politics right now, and in everywhere really. They're using the same thing, that same mechanism to represent like change for the patriarchal program, or change for women, or change for society. But it's not. It's a commercial. You're watching a makeup commercial. You're watching, and it's just going to die out. It's placed in your consciousness so that it could live and die at a particular time frame. And since they control it, they can bring life, they can birth it at whatever time, and they can kill it at whatever time. So they birthed Trump into your reality. He's either going to be killed, or not killed, but in a sense, like that mechanism, that idea is going to be addressed by women. Him, what he represents, and that's the whole thing. That video that was there is a grab him by the pussy thing. That's the whole idea. It's like, what? How could this be so bad? They're playing your emotional body to suck you into 2020, at least. So they put Trump in there to represent the emotional bubbling, the emotional lava for 2020. So that, you know, they're playing years and years and years out. So this whole women's empowerment thing, of course, it's going to be a rally point because it's easy to understand the patriarchal program. It's easy to understand the abuse that's going on. It's easy to understand like all this nonsense within this society, but addressing that doesn't address the system. Fixing that doesn't fix the system. And that's the thing. That's the main point I wanted to say, is because everybody who's talking about women's rights and Black Lives Matter, they're asking the system to change. They think this system is worth fixing. It's not worth fixing. It's not where it never was. It was built to be this way. So back to Oprah. Oprah, that video where I was talking about how they're going to use the new age, they're going to use these heavy hitters. That was obvious last night in the Golden Globes. It was obvious last night in the Golden Globes awards ceremony. It was blatant. It was blatantly obvious. And that's not to say that this stuff doesn't need to be addressed. That's just to say that don't be a fool, pretty much. Just don't be a fool and think that what you're seeing is the reality. Like that's what's really going on, because it's not. They're using people. They're using those actors. They're using you to think and act a certain way. So when they get that whole, so the same way they had people rallying around Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders in the last campaign, now you're going to rally around whoever's for women's rights in the future. And this will be the real time that you can vote for your real first woman president or whatever it is that they want to do. However they're going to activate it, it's going to be in your face to play on your emotions and make you believe that any change that you want to do in this society is only based upon fixing this system. It won't go into addressing the entire system itself. That's what it really boils down to. So that's what I was seeing last night with the Golden Globes and Oprah. And in reference to the honeymoon phase of flat Earth, that's the same thing in reference to the honeymoon phase of the system itself. So let me close out the honeymoon phase of the patriarchal programming, because that's what it really was. Or it's not even the honeymoon phase of the patriarchal program. It's the ending of that idea so that they can bring in a new one. So it's a transition point. And that's what I was saying to a friend of mine the other day who was asking me about, what's going on in 2018. I was saying that this year is going to be like personal accountability. Like you asking questions of yourself and going into a deeper layer of understanding what that really is, what it really means, finding the meaning in something. So you can rally around your first woman president, your first black president, but that doesn't bring any meaning to you. It actually explains how shallow you are. If you're just voting for a president just because he's black, or you're voting for a president just because she's a woman, then that shows more about where your level of consciousness is and where you're thinking, where your depth is than anything else. And the system knows that people are extremely shallow. If they could sell you your first black president and then that's it, then they can sell you your first woman president and then that'll be it. No attachments. See, they had a huge amount of attachments with Hillary Clinton, and they just wanted to make you salivate even more when for the first woman president. It's like foreplay. They just want to get your juices flowing. Like that's why they put her up there with Donald Trump. It wasn't just to distract you and all this other stuff. They want you to get your blood boiling for real change you could believe in. And as soon as you are brought all the way up, boom, they brought you back down. Donald Trump. So that you can have 4 years of boiling, 4 years of rumbling. And when those 4 years are up, and it's only 3 years, really, it's only gonna be, it's right around the corner where they're, like I said, the campaign for 2020 started this year. But you're gonna be rumbling. They're gonna beat the shit out of Donald Trump in public. So not to make a mockery out of him, but more so to make you suck yourself into the reality that they want you to be in. They want you to vote. They want you to be angry. They want you to be pissed off. They want you to be disinformed, uninformed. They want you to be so emotionally triggered that you don't address the system itself. You just accept the doggy treats of change that they have presented to you. That's what Barack Obama represented, and that's what this whole next presidential selection is going to represent too. It's going to represent the facade of change, the illusion of change, the so-called Black Lives Matter of change. That's why I said when I first started talking about Black Lives Matter back however many years ago, or whenever it did come out, it was touchy, because that's the same way you have people who are going to be like, what are you talking about? We're talking about real things. I was like, I'm talking about them real things too. I'm talking about those real things on a deeper level. But if you're talking about those supposedly real things in a Geico commercial or some kind of Super Bowl ad or something like that, then it doesn't matter anymore, because it's not yours. In fact, it never was, because they put that stuff out there for you to think and act that certain way. That's why George Soros was funding Black Lives Matter. They need to put millions and millions of dollars into that movement to have the illusion of change. And George Soros, he's an insider in that system, but that's why they had to use him, because he's apparently like an outsider, like he's on his own, but he's obviously part of the system, but he's not part of the system. He's like a government contractor. That's what George Soros represented and represents now. And George Soros represents, and since he promoted Black Lives Matter, so you have your government sponsored so-called black movement. And that's exactly what they want to be doing. So now you're going to have this government and Hollywood sponsored women's movement and have the illusion of addressing the patriarchal system, but they're only going to give you another doggy treat. They're only going to give you this illusion of change in the political scheme of things, because what do you think is going to happen if they elect their first woman president, or if they elect their first black woman president? Like, what do you think all those actresses, everybody in Hollywood, what do you think they're going to do? They will be throwing parties all over the damn place. I mean, just like they did with Barack Obama, it's going to actually be crazier. It's going to be even more intense, whether it's a black woman president or whoever. If it's a woman president, you know what it's going to feel like. Just remember, think back to what happened when Obama was selected. Now, that's going to happen in the future. So in order to make that more real for you, they have to build it up in the systems that you pay attention to. A lot of people watch these award ceremonies. A lot of people watch television, and that's where they get their information from. And then they're going to spend the rest of the week talking about, like tonight, they're going to talk about the award show, Colbert. They're going to talk about all this stuff that's going on, and they're going to seed it into your reality over and over and over again, so that you don't think for yourself, because your thoughts have to be prepackaged for you. Just like your movements, your protests have to be prepackaged for you. Like, here's Black Lives Matter. It's like putting a avocado in a plastic wrapping and selling it to you. It's like, what are you doing? Like, what? Why are you using all this garbage? Why don't you just address the system? It's like a genetically modified avocado. There's like no seed in there. It tastes like shit, but you like avocado, so you're just going to eat it. But it's in a package. It has no seeds, genetically modified, and it's sold in a store that's going to make the system profit off of your ignorance. But it's new. Like, I've never seen an avocado in a package before. Now you're going to buy it. So, anyway, I'm trying to keep this kind of short because the video I put in was long enough, but and I've already mentioned a lot of this information in previous videos going into like how this system is transitioning. It's really sick. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting to see all these actors and actresses like stand out there and just be like, oh yeah, well, things are changing and this is this, and knowing that they have hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of followers, and a lot of those followers are teenagers, young adults, and even kids, and they're just following. Like, that's generations of programming. Like I said, those kids, teenagers, and young adults, those are the ones who are worshiping the mainstream media. That's the majority of people. That's why this system plays years and decades and centuries out. They play to mind control your kids. So Hollywood and the Golden Globes is the same kind of conditioning for your children and your adults, more for your adults, that kind of thing. It has the same effect on the mind of an adult that the public education system has on the mind of a child. It's indoctrination. It's supposed to make you think and act a certain way. So that's pretty much the perspective I wanted to come from in reference to the Golden Globes, how they're pushing this idea of change, and what this program is going to do for its next steps. Like, how is it going to take its next steps? Well, they formalized it last night. They told you, we're going to use our big dogs, and it's going to be all about moving into this women empowerment movement. So last year was all about like chaos. It was all about hoping, just hope something bad doesn't happen. But you had two shitty options, Hillary and Trump. And you're hoping, oh, well, let's just hope not the worst thing happens. And then what did they do? They put the worst thing in there on purpose to play with your emotions. So I just wanted to put this out there now, set this tone early in this year right now, so I can revisit it later on, whether it's the end of this year or the end of next year, whenever they're playing that game again, and we can see, oh yeah, well, this has been planned, this has been laid out. And in reference to the flat earth community, this is another thing that I was discussing with a friend of mine, is that when the year kicked over and then I looked back and I was like, man, this is like year 3 for me talking about flat earth. This is the 3rd year now. And what I was thinking about was that looking at this being January, we have a whole year to go of, change and holidays and all that other stuff, and people are still going to believe in that holiday system, and still people are still believing in politics and Hollywood and all that stuff. The thing is, for flat earth, the honeymoon phase is over. All that shit about like, oh yeah, well, we're just going to talk about flat earth and it's going to be flat versus globe, that shit is over. It's dead in 2018. It's enough talking about the earth is flat. Okay, the earth is flat. Now what? What's the meaning there? That's what 2018 seems to be transitioning into. Like I said earlier, this year's going to be mostly about personal accountability, your responsibility to yourself, your responsibility to the experience itself. And flat earth is going to be a part of that. No more listening to these assholes lie about whatever it is. They're mentioning flat earth in a lot of very sly ways all over the place. And the mainstream being able to ignore flat earth, it's not going to make it out of 2018. That's what I'm saying for 2018. That's not going to make it out of the year. They can't ignore it. So they're seeding it in order to co-opt it. Like I said, they were going to do in all these other videos. They're seeding it slowly but surely. They're making fun of it even more so. There's a video on the trending page yesterday where they were talking about portals in Sedona, a gateway to Sedona or something like that. And they were making fun of the New Age community in there. And that's what gave me a little insight into how they're going to both demonize the New Age community and use the New Age community to sell in the mainstream New Age community, which is what I was referencing in the Oprah, using Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle to represent that New Age shift. So that video where they were demonizing, I can't remember, that was the name of it though. It's probably still in the trending on YouTube if you're interested in it. But they actually had a flat earth reference in that video where they were talking about things that don't make any sense, or conspiracy theories or something. They slowly, like they like had this image float through the screen that referenced flat earth. So that's going to happen for basically probably like the first 6 months, 8 months. Towards the latter part of the year, you're going to have more people being like, all right, this is something we need to start looking into, because obviously NASA's full of shit. They're probably going to start figuring out that Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye is full of shit, because Bill Nye's got his show out there, and that just is just the fakest. It's like a cartoon for adults. And if you're a real adult, because there's a lot of man children out there, and that's the majority, that's the status quo. So since that's the status quo, those man children are going to soak up that Bill Nye shit and just be like, oh, this is my intelligence. That's mine. Everything he said is super smart stuff, and that's how I think. That's what makes me smarter than all these other flat earthers, is because I can relate to people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye. Well, that shit's gonna end pretty soon, because people are just not. It's dying. Like, that shit is dying, and people are seeing what it's all about. So. Slowly but surely, whether it happens in this year or the upcoming years, it's happening. That's the main point. And it's up to the people to determine the time frame in that, because it's the people who are going to, the consciousness of the people who are going to determine the mind control consciousness that gets projected by the system. It's not the other way around. It's not them controlling us. It's us controlling ourselves by our lack of conscious engagement, because we give our power away to the system. So the Bill Nye's and the Neil deGrasse Tysons and the NASA's, they're all being revealed even more so. And the mainstream media is eventually going to see that. And I got a little taste of that idea when I finally watched that Neil deGrasse Tyson interview on Stephen Colbert, the latest one. And they even said he's been the most he's been on the Colbert show the most. Something like 9 times. That was his 9th time being on the Tonight Show or the Late Show, whatever it is. And you can see, like, that's on purpose because they want to mind control you. They know a lot of people watch that. They know extra more people are going to watch it when Neil deGrasse Tyson is on there. So it's like win, win, win. You get mind control of heliocentrism, the education system, the university system, punking you, like bullying you, like talking down to the flat earth community just by his presence and his arrogant ways and all that other stuff. And then you have the beliefs in him by Stephen Colbert, and then you also have how many times he's been on there. So that's extra more believable. But the tone of that last interview changed a little bit. It shifted a little bit. And Stephen Colbert seemed like he wasn't really on board. He wasn't riding on Neil deGrasse Tyson's phallus as much as he used to. He used to be riding Neil deGrasse Tyson hard. I mean, like he was some kind of superhero or something, or like this god or something like that. But he kind of like brought him down to earth a little bit more in that interview. And he actually said it. He was like, you couldn't be more Neil deGrasse Tyson than you are right now. That was like a slap in the face to Neil deGrasse Tyson, because it's basically saying like your ego is bigger than this whole auditorium right now. Like you're out of control. And that's kind of how the tone of Stephen Colbert was during that whole interview, because Neil deGrasse Tyson was just getting on his roll, like doing that, oh yeah, oh well, I'm just so smart, and then I'm like, he put on his glasses, like he thinks he's funny, like he thinks, and that the thing is that Stephen Colbert is actually, he's a comedian, he's actually pretty funny in some ways. But Neil deGrasse Tyson is not at all funny. But he's trying to be. He's trying to be likable. He's trying to be extra smart and extra knowing of everything that's going on in the universe. And by him trying so hard, he's exposing himself. And I think after the 9th time of being on that show, Stephen Colbert is finally starting to see that this dude is more than likely full of shit. That doesn't mean that he's not part of Colbert is not part of the system and all that other stuff. It's just that a lot of these people might be kind of informed, but not fully informed. And some of them might be completely oblivious. So given the benefit of the doubt that Stephen Colbert is completely oblivious to the heliocentric illusion, he could have definitely been buying in completely into Neil deGrasse Tyson knowing everything about the universe, but eventually starting to see that he's full of shit. And it was confirmed even more so when they showed that image, like Stephen Colbert brought that picture of that rock that was supposedly flying through space. They took a picture of it with a satellite, and Colbert wanted to go into that whole like, oh yeah, well this could be a alien spaceship and it just looks like a rock, but it's not. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson was basically said, that's actually not a real picture. It's just a CGI composite. It's an artistic rendition of what that might be. So Stephen Colbert is like a child, like telling a kid Santa Claus doesn't exist. That's what happened to Stephen Colbert. And he was just like, oh, he took the wind right out of him, cut the legs right out from under him.
And he's just looking at something somebody made up now. But he brought that on his show. Like, now they're talking about what? Nothing. But Stephen Colbert had to defend that from the alien agenda perspective, and he had to like suck Neil deGrasse Tyson into that. The thing is, they were even more exposed by showing that image, and they have no more options. Their options are running dry. Nobody's going to really believe these assholes when they get in there and try to bully you into believing CGI imagery. And that point was proven with Colbert on that one, in that one moment. So that's how people are going to be when they start looking at the Earth images and realize that the Earth is a CGI composite. So back to the honeymoon phase of flat Earth. How I'm feeling, that whole flat versus globe stuff, that died in the first 2 years. So basically, this is how it lays out. And I'll close it out on this, because actually I got one more topic, and I'll maybe I'll save that for the next one. But anyway, let me just finish this. So this is how it's been laid out in my perspective of what's going on with the flat Earth community and that whole thing. The first year in 2015 that modern flat Earth information started to hit the scene was basically like shock value. It was like the introduction to what's going on. So you had all these people who were just kind of like on the fence for the first year. After the first year, people weren't on the fence anymore. You had people now formally engaging, like taking a stand and being like, no, NASA's full of shit. They've been lying forever. Like, this is not only limited to NASA, it goes into the entire system. The entire system is garbage, and it's all an illusion. It's all been set up to make you think, act, and feel a certain way. So the first year was like shock and awe, and then people on the fence. And then the second year, 2016, was it was people really kind of like, all right, well, what's going on here? How does this really fit? And then people like getting together and doing this whole thing, and then shaking the dust off and getting all the kinks out of the system, which is their own systems. And then 2017 was actually, man, this is like, yeah, 15. This is the third year now. Okay, so all of 17 was people taking flat Earth from outside, just looking at like it as if it were on a television. And then 17 was about looking at it, how it affects them, or the latter half of 17. It's like, how, okay, this is not only flat Earth, it's not only just that lie, it's all of these other systems. So that was the majority of 16 into 17. And then at the latter part of 17, it was like, all right, well, what does all this stuff mean? How does this fit? And this is where a lot of the fake ass people in the flat Earth community were being held accountable. They're just like, what do you give a shit about the mainstream media for? Stop talking about the mainstream media as if they give a shit about you. These are the motherfuckers who lied to you in the first place. So what are you doing here? What are you really looking? Who are you in this whole system? I don't give a shit about how fringe and how like whatever all this information about flat Earth is. That doesn't make you. You make you. The information doesn't make you. You make you. So who are you? If you are taking this information and channeling it through mainstream media, we know who you are. We know what you're about, and you're a piece of shit. And that's what it took. It took a whole damn year, damn near a year and a half, for people to realize that shit about these individuals. So that's happening. It's happened. It's still happening right now, but it happened. I say it happened because it was definitely a thing. Like, I was taking shit for addressing these individuals who are just prepackaging flat earth for the mainstream. I was taking shit from people who were defending these assholes since I started talking about flat earth in 2015. Like since then, like when I started to address how fake these individuals were, I was getting hit by all their community followers and all that other stuff. All that shit, that's what I mean by the honeymoon phase is over. You being all up in people's asses about how wonderful flat earth is and all this other stuff, that's great and all fine and dandy for one time frame. What I'm saying is that this next time frame, this next year, you're going to have to look for meaning, not only in flat earth, but in yourself. You can say that you have a meaning and a purpose just by observing the creative intelligence of this experience, but it doesn't mean shit if you don't find the meaning in yourself within that experience that has a meaning and a purpose. Flat Earth might show you how this experience has a meaning and purpose, but you are the only person who can show yourself your own meaning and purpose. Nobody else, nothing else can show you your meaning and purpose. Only you. So people were celebrating in the honeymoon phase of flat earth, having a general meaning and purpose. But now it's 2 years have passed. All them fake ass people who put themselves out there in front of you as leaders of the flat earth community, all that fake Hollywood shit. That's no different. That award ceremony at the Golden Globes was no different than the flat earth conference, like the whole Flatty Awards and all that other shit. There's no fucking meaning and purpose there. It's just dead. It's like it was like the Golden Globes. It's nothing. It represents nothing. That's not to say that, oh yeah, like they're not to down talk all people coming together, and I understand that meeting, and that's no different than hanging out with some friends. I'm not saying that. The thing is, I'm saying is that yes, you can hang out with some friends. But if you're hanging out with some friends that are full of shit, they're not your friends. If you're not full of shit, if you're not like that, then it's fake. So that whole thing was fake. It's going to keep being fake because people are still going to hold on to that, no different than people are still holding on to Hollywood and all that other stuff. So anyway, I don't want to get off into that flat earth politics and all that other stuff too much, because the point being is that it has a time limit on it. The time that there's an ending for that. And the only way you're going to be able to see that is if you start looking for it. See, people can't look for that when they're inside of it because they love it so much. They can't let it go. You can't let go of how wonderful something is. If you're inside of that wonderfulness, you're going to let go of a piece of yourself. So people have to get out of that. And that's what I'm seeing is happening in 2018 when I say that the flat earth honeymoon phase is over. Because you can't just celebrate it just because. There's enough people here talking about this information that the people who have been talking about it for a few years now have the responsibility to shift in to a next perspective of what's really going on here from a personal sort of perspective. Like, what does this mean for the experiencer? We have understood what the experience is in reference on a very general level of how it's being sold to us. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my family, my culture, history, the present moment, and how they're selling in mind control programs for the future? How does this mean? What does this mean for all of that? Because the honeymoon phase of priding yourself in being a flat earther, the honeymoon phase of not being a globe head, the honeymoon phase of all that egotistical bullshit is over. Now you have to hold yourself accountable for being something as opposed to just saying you're something. Oh, I'm a flat earther. No, be something. Be about that shit. Talk about what it actually means. In order to talk about what it actually means, you have to find out what it actually means. And it doesn't only mean flat versus globe. They've been lying to us. No, what have they been lying to us about? How long have they? Who are they? What is this? Where are we? How did this so-called power system get into this position in the first place? Those questions can no longer be avoided. Those questions are no longer going to be just pushed to the side because we're just so happy that the earth is not a globe anymore. You can't do that anymore. You could do that with those fake ass people selling that flat earth top brass celebrity world. You could do it with that fake commercial shit, but that time is up. The honeymoon phase for flat earth is over. And that's where it's going to start to shift into the honeymoon phase of the mainstream flat earth. It's going to start. That's when the mainstream is going to co-opt it. But before it gets to that honeymoon phase, they gotta beat the shit out of it first. They're gonna make fun of it. They gotta defend themselves and hope people are gonna get on board with, the bully mentality and instead of researching. So that's still gonna happen first before the honeymoon phase of the mainstream honeymoon phase. So there's that. The honeymoon. That's my projection for 2018 for flat Earth and the so-called political scene. Now, in reference to the Black conscious community, another thing that I realize is that the same kind of implosion that's happening with fake ass flat Earth people and fake ass like political pundits and politicians and fake Hollywood people. The same thing is happening for fake Black conscious leaders. That's the same thing that's going on right now. People are being revealed, being held accountable personally for, where are you really coming from? What are you really about? So like people like Umar Johnson, that dude is about himself. And he's very intelligent. He has some very good points. But the overall point that he's making that is made up of a whole bunch of other points. And I want to do a video about that. It might be better to do it in like a live stream. I might talk to Bro Sanchez about that to really go in on like a video that he did, because we can really do like a good breakdown of what he's about, what he represents, but on a very general kind of approach to what I'm seeing in reference to the Black conscious community is that just like they're holding individuals accountable in Hollywood, in politics, and in other little circles, they're doing the same thing with the Black conscious community, and things are getting weeded out. The thing with the Black conscious community is that I don't really follow a lot of the what's going on there, but I'm aware of a lot of the information and the perspectives that they're coming from. As limiting as many of them may be, the thing with the Black conscious community is that, and this is why they have a lot of followers, is that because they have leaders. They're built up of a lot of leaders. And the thing is, at least they have some leaders. Like, look at any other community. The Black conscious community actually has the most leaders, like actual leaders. As shitty as many of them may be in their perspectives, at least they have the idea of being a leader. Look at all these other communities. Ain't no leaders in Hollywood. Ain't no leaders in politics. No leaders in the conspiracy theory world. Alex Jones tries to be a leader, but he's not a real leader. He doesn't have followers. He has viewers. People in the Black conscious community have followers. They have people. They have people that will go to the umpteenth degree for their leader. A lot of people won't do that for Alex Jones. He doesn't have it like that. He's about the information, and most of it is mind control. But in reference to like the Black conscious community and their version of leadership, like I said, in reference to personal accountability or things shifting with this year and the whole honeymoon phase thing, the honeymoon phase for the Black conscious community, just like the honeymoon phase for the flat earth, in my opinion, is also over with. So the honeymoon phase for the Black conscious community was actually, I guess, could be summed up in people giving their power away to an individual because that individual sounds good. Like Umar Johnson, when he gets on there and he starts talking about, this is what it is. This is how it is. White supremacy this and all that. I mean, you can believe it. Like, he makes a lot of sense. He makes a lot of good points. But the time for believing people just because they're talking a good talk, they got a good sales pitch, like these snake oil salesmen, that time is up. You can't just be following people just because other people follow people. That's not, you're still a slave. You're a slave to somebody else now. Calling yourself not part of, I took the red pill and all this other shit. No, you're just doing another version of the same thing you did before. Whereas before you were following the mainstream or politicians, now you're just following these so-called Black conscious leaders and not thinking for yourself, because they've said that, and that's the thing. What makes you think like some of these people, just like in the flat earth community, what makes you think that some of these so-called Black conscious leaders ain't put out there on purpose? A lot of these people are part of that whole bougie, boule sort of community. A lot of them are still in that industry. So since people are revealing the industry of the flat earth community trying to go mainstream, the industry of Hollywood, the industry of politics, the industry of mind control, the industry of the Black conscious community, that shit's all being revealed. It's been being revealed. Not even just in the videos that I've been talking. I mean, many people have already been talking about this for a long time now. It's only now being seen for what it is, and that's what I mean by the honeymoon phase is over with. So the honeymoon phase of flat earth, done. The honeymoon phase of believing in politics, done. The honeymoon phase in the Black conscious community is done. And the only thing left is for you to think for yourself. You to start holding accountable your thoughts, your beliefs, yourself. Not because somebody else believes in them, but because you have the responsibility to hold yourself accountable for what you're thinking. In the honeymoon phase, you could get by just being cool with what a leader said or what a group said, what a movement said. You could just be cool floating through it with everybody else because everybody's cool in the honeymoon phase. Everything's just hunky-dory. It's just beautiful. It's wonderful. Look at how much work we're doing. Look at how much truth we're sharing. That's what happens in the honeymoon phase. What happens when you get out of the honeymoon phase? Shit gets real. Shit gets real. And when the shit hits the fan and it gets real like that, you have to start thinking for yourself. And you have to start going deeper. You have to learn a deeper layer of discernment. You have to get closer. So in reference to the honeymoon phase, you actually have to get closer to your partner. You can't act like, oh yeah, like it's just cool because we're cool anymore. No, you have to actually know and find out who that person is. You have to find out, you have to get closer, because the time for playing that, oh, we're so in love shit, we're so unified shit, all that shit is done. It's done. Now's the time for actually being connected, and just not saying that you're connected, actually being connected in a way that shares a perspective of connection that isn't based upon any one thing. See, in reference to the Black conscious community, the honeymoon phase being over means that, yeah, they were yelling about all these topics and all this, but what does it mean? What does it really mean? How far are you willing to go? This is why people are questioning people like Tariq Nasheed and Boyce Watkins and Dr. Umar Johnson and all this. They're questioning them because, yeah, you might talk a good game, but what are you really about? What are you talking about? Are you talking about addressing, uprooting this entire system? What are you talking, Barack Obama, or are you talking Malcolm X? For one example of differences of ideas, just energetically, what are you really talking about? Are you talking Black Lives Matter, or are you talking the Black Panther Party? What are you really talking about here? Same thing goes for Flat Earth. See, you can see in reference when I put up Black Lives Matter next to the Black Panther Party, you can feel the difference. You know the difference. You know what the hell that means. Same thing goes for Flat Earth. What are you really talking about here with this whole information of Flat Earth? There's a Black Lives Matter and a Black Panther Party of the Flat Earth. Energetically, there's a whole energetically. And ultimately what it boils down to is your own depth of understanding, understanding, and overstanding of what's going on here. That's how far it goes. It's just like, all right, well, what am I really talking about here? Because before, it was you could work all the kinks out by being in the honeymoon phase. Some of the kinks, you can work them all out because you're getting close. But you're also having to use your discernment of realizing that some of these people that have jumped into your honeymoon phase, they're full of shit, and they want to live in that honeymoon phase. They're not going to be able to let that go. Just like people ain't going to be able to let go of politics, they can't let go of Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Alex Jones, TYT. They can't let go of Western civilization. It's given them so much. It's made up so much of them. They're not going to give that away. They're not going to give that away. It doesn't matter how many people they've genocided. It doesn't matter how much land has been destroyed. They can't give it away because they can't give themselves away. They can't do it. So in order to hide that imbalance, in order to hide that weakness, they will glorify and stay in the honeymoon phase. And that's the divide that I said like two videos ago or 2 builds ago, talking about some people are going to be cool, and then some people are going to be open to the information and actually do something about it. And then you're definitely going to have people who are not at all going to do that. They're just going to be like, you know what? I don't care. I love this system. This is the only system that matters. And we need to protect this. No different than somebody protecting religious dogma, because that's their belief system. You're going to have people that's a definite. And how I explain that is the honeymoon phase. So people will live and die in the honeymoon phase. Basically, that's what religion is. Waiting for Jesus to come back. That's a honeymoon phase. You're staying there. You can stay there forever because you're always in the right. You're always right when Jesus is always coming. You're always right. He's on his way. He's coming on. The same thing's happening in politics. Things are going to change. Same thing happens in so-called conspiracy theories. We're taking them down. Things are going to change. Trump's in office now. Alex Jones, that's how they sell you. Stealing your moment, stealing your present moment, because you have no understanding of your past moments. And since you have no understanding of your past moments, you can't think for yourself. There's no understanding of the history. So you're going to believe whatever somebody tells you is going on in this present moment. And when they've stolen your history, and then they have made you give away your present moment, now they can install your future timelines. So they got your past, they got your present, and they got your future inherently. And it's mostly because people are locked into that honeymoon phase. That's what all the Golden Globes and all that nonsense represents. People dressing up and all that. They're celebrating themselves. Hollywood is like the poster child for the honeymoon phase of humanity. That's what Hollywood represents. And they promote through television, social media, and everything else how wonderful it is to be in the honeymoon phase forever. And that honeymoon phase is enslavement because you can't think for yourself. So to sum it all up, all that shit's being held accountable right now by the individual. Whereas before, these communities were holding all of these community collective honeymoon phases accountable. Now individuals are holding the people who are claiming to be outside of the honeymoon phase. They're holding them accountable. And that's going to take some time too, because you're going to have people on the fence with that, because they're not going to be able to let go of their leaders. They're not going to be able to let go of their movements. They're not going to be able to let go of this and that. And while people are holding on to that, the system is going to transition into their next mind control program. And that's what I was saying. That's what I'm saying in reference to flat earth being co-opted. That's what I'm saying in reference to this whole women's empowerment movement being used to sell in politics and sell in the next mind control program. And the same thing's happening with the Black conscious community. There's more work that needs to be done in the Black conscious community, because you have all of these leaders out there. All of these leaders have their own values. They have their own perspectives. They have their own this, their own egos. They have their own that. And then they have their followers have reflections of that too. The thing is, it's going to be easier for the followers to change than it is for the leaders to change. Because a lot of the times, a lot of these leaders have their finances involved in this. And when their finances are involved, their very well-beings, they can't let go of that. They can't make vulnerable their very well-being by entertaining another perspective, another thought. Like Tariq Nasheed, he can't really go into the depths of talking about flat earth because that's going to challenge his business. His business is tied up in that honeymoon phase world. So what is he going to choose? Something as unstable as a flat earth theory because it might be true from his perspective? Or is he going to choose what's safe and what's made money, what's bankable? And in many cases, in the majority of the information in there is true. It's on point. Like the information that's in hidden colors, a lot of that information is on point in many ways. The thing is, what are you going to do with it? What does it all mean? What does it all mean? And that's what this all boils down to. What does it all mean? What are you going, now that you have a meaning and a purpose, what is that meaning and purpose, and what are you going to do with it? So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with this video and this build. Yeah, I'll save the other things for the next build. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.